So good morning, everybody. Today is a very auspicious day. It's Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of the Hebrew month of Shvat. Who wants to share what Tu B'Shvat is? Anybody? Go, Alyssa, you want to?
Well, I heard it's the new year of the trees,
Correct,
so
correct.
it's kind of like a rebirth.
Beautiful, yes. Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of Shvat, is called the Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot. The Talmud tells us we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, for the Jewish people in Tishrei, which is the anniversary of the creation of mankind and womankind. And we celebrate the New Year for the trees on the 15th day of Shvat. And it's a little bit perplexing if you asked me. Why? It's winter. Look outside. Anybody's blossom? Anybody's wait, let's anybody see growth? You see ice, rain. So why are we celebrating Tu B'Shvat in the month of January? Sometimes it's in February, depending on the lunar calendar, the Jewish calendar. Anybody have any insights? Why Tu B'Shvat is now?
A hope for the future? Oh, wait.
Yeah, very good. It's a prediction or a hope for the future, Diane. That's very nice. Anybody else? Remember, you can never get anything wrong in this group. A guy comes to the rabbi with his friend. He says, "We have an argument, Rabbi. Can you settle it?" The rabbi says, "Sure, tell me your side." He tells him his side. The rabbi says, "You're right." He says to the other guy, "Tell me your side." He says, "You're also right." So then the third guy comes and says, "Rabbi, how could they both be right?" He says, "You're also right." So first of all, on a practical level, if you go to the land of Israel now, you will notice that there indeed the buds, the blossoms are beginning to appear. So we do follow the geography, not the geography, what do we call it? The
location,
very good, of Eretz Yisrael. But yet thousands and thousands of Jews live out of Eretz Yisrael. So maybe we shouldn't be celebrating Tu B'Shvat. Why are we celebrating Tu B'Shvat? So the answer is, if you know a little science, when you put a seed into the ground, what happens? It kind of decomposes and you think it's all over, but really it decomposes and then it takes the roots of the trees and the flowers.
Dormant.
Yeah, they're dormant. Very well said. That's a good word. And so, Diane, tell us, because you're a gardener. Tell us a little bit. So what happens during these months? Go ahead, share.
Something in it tells it, God tells it, this is the time, it's warming up, the land is defrosting, it's starting to open, ready to blossom and grow, I guess.
So basically, if you study the sciences, just because it's winter, just because you don't see anything blossoming above, underground, in the roots, the nutrients, the rain, the water is giving the trees and the blossoms and the flowers the ability to blossom. Planting doesn't happen on May 1st. Planting and growth happens way before. So Tu B'Shvat is a celebration of potential.
Half the world it's summer. I mean, below the equator, it's still summer. We're looking at it. Well, and I'm in Puerto Rico, so there's it's growing all over the place. But it's not through the eyes of Europeans and Americans, but through everybody that there's growth happening.
Exactly. And also when the Torah gives us a mitzvah, some people say it doesn't apply to me. It's not for me, it's for somebody else. Tu B'Shvat, if God gives us a holiday, a new year of trees, it's for everyone wherever you are. So we have to analyze, for those of us who are living in the wintry climate where we don't see the beauty of the botany and the growth, Why are we celebrating Tu B'Shvat? But even in Israel, and even in warmer climates, there are times when the roots need to take in the nutrients and begin to, many times a tree, seems dormant and suddenly it blossoms again. So the celebration of Tu B'Shvat is not so much, oh, now I'm going to see the flowers in my garden. My bulbs are coming out of the earth. It's a celebration, understanding of the potential of human beings, the potential of humankind, the potential of the world. Because the Torah says, Ki Adam Eitz Hasada, man is compared to a tree. How is man, and when I say man, I mean man and woman are compared to a tree. How are we compared to a tree? What is the analogy? Does anybody have any insights into that?
Roots and growth.
Very good. So you have three basic parts of, let's say, a tree. You have the roots, right? You have the trunk, and then you have the branches and the fruit that come out of the trunk. So when we teach in Hebrew school, we say, what are the roots? The roots is our faith and believe in God. When you have strong roots, the tree can grow. What is the tree? What is the tree? The Torah. When you believe in a God, you'll believe in the words of God, the wisdom of God, which is the Torah. And when you study Torah, you start producing fruit. How? By doing mitzvahs. That is the fruit. So that's a simple analogy. Again, a tree, what happens when you're about to plant the tree or plant the sapling or plant the bush, you scratch the seed, you damage the seed. That tree is not going to grow very well or at all. So the roots, the foundation, refers in psychological babble as childhood. Children who have a childhood trauma and something hurts them when they're children, when they go into adulthood, there's a lot of damage that has to be repaired. It has to be repaired. So the roots is our childhood. How are we raised? What happened positively or, God forbid, negatively in our childhood? And then the trunk is our adulthood. Because once we emerge from childhood, becomes adults. And then what are the fruits is the impact we make, the influence we have on our families, on ourselves, and the world around us. Now, if, God forbid, again, a child has trauma and they become an adult that feels always unhealthy, mentally, psychologically, cannot give to others when they feel that their whole lives was one of deprivation. So in order, so to speak, to have a healthy tree, to have a healthy human being, it begins with the roots. It begins with childhood. Childhood, then into adulthood, and once you're a mature adult, you can begin to give fruit, whether it's physically, you're giving forth children, or your impact, or your influence and sphere in the universe. So we see in so many ways how man and women are compared to a tree. And the tree is a beautiful analogy of how we can view our lives and how we can view ourselves. This is called the 3 layers of human identity. The roots, the bark, and then the fruit, the branches and the fruit. So also there's so many mitzvahs in the Torah associated with the land of Israel of how to preserve the earth, the ecology, and so on. So if anybody is ever concerned, do the Jews care about nature? Do we care about the universe, preservation, conservation? You just have to look into the Torah. And you don't have to worry about global warming. Trust me. God is going to take care of the global warming that people are so concerned about. I want to share with you a beautiful poem about a tree. Or it's more of a story poem. A man was traveling through the desert, hungry, thirsty, and tired, when he came upon a tree bearing luscious fruit and affording plenty of shade. Underneath ran a spring of water. He ate of the fruit, drank of the water, and rested beneath the shade. He was about to leave, and the tree said to him, and he turned to the tree and said, Tree, O tree, with what should I bless you? Should I bless you that your fruit be sweet? But your fruit is already sweet. Should I bless you that your shade be plentiful? But your shade is plentiful. That a spring of water should run beneath you? Already a spring of water runs beneath you. There is one thing that which I can bless you. May it be God's will that all the trees planted from your seeds should be like you. And this is from the Talmud Ta'anit, this like what I call poem story. So this is the story of the tree, that a blessing for every human being is that because you are a reflection of God and the beauty of the world, and you blossom, that you're blessing that everyone who comes in contact with you, besides your children and your family, should be like you, should reflect the beauty that you are. That is how man is like a tree. We have to aspire that when people come in contact with us, when people speak to us, call us, whatever contact you have, friends, family, they should say, I want to be like her. Because look at the values, the morals that this person reflects. This is a gift that every person has, to be able to be a tree that everyone can look at them and say, I want to be like that. I want to be like her or him. So Tu B'Shvat, what do? You eat a new fruit that you haven't eaten before, and you say Bora Priya Eitz and Shechiyanu, which is the blessing on a new fruit. You also, it's a custom to eat the 7 species that the land of Israel is famous for. Chita, Seora, Geffen, Te'ema, Rimon, Shemen, Zayis. So you have like this, you have grapes, you have figs, you have dates, you have barley, you have wheat, you have Rimon, not Zayis, you have Rimon, pomegranate, and you have olives. Those are the 7 species. People also eat almonds, and people also eat Boxar carob. And you know why? Because how long does it take to grow a carob tree? Does anybody know? Where's our botanist? Diane.
I don't know.
You never,
100 years.
Almost 70 years. 70 years.
Okay.
So there was a very, very famous sage called Choni Hamagal. Why was he called Choni Hamagal? Magal means a circle. There was a drought and there was no water. So the people came to him, Choni, Choni, you must get us rain from God. So he prayed to God, give rain. No rain. He drew a circle around himself in the sand. He says, God, I'm not moving till you give rain. And rain began to fall. So the story of Choni Hamagal, I mentioned last week the story of Cinderella, its origin in the Torah. So this week you wonder, Rip Van Winkle. Here's the story from Tu B'Shvat. Choni was walking, he took a stroll, and he sees an elderly man planting a carob tree. He said, my dear friend, what are you planting? He says, I'm planting a carob tree. He says, my dear friend, but you will not be around to see this tree. And there was a little bit of a mockery there. So the old man turned to Choni and said, we never planned for ourselves. We always planned for the future, for future generations. Beautiful lesson. You don't plan for yourself. You don't only acquire wealth for yourself. You want to give the wealth to your children, to the next generation. Generational wealth. We also mean spiritual wealth. So Choni suddenly felt a tremendous feeling of tiredness. Good morning, Laura. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning.
So he went into the corner there in the fields and he lied down under a tree to take a little dremel, a little nap. And God made the trees grow over him. And he slept for 70 years. 70 years. He wakes up thinking he took a 10-minute, 20-minute nap, a Shabbos nap, even though it wasn't Shabbos. And he looks and he doesn't understand the carob tree that he just saw a few minutes ago is bearing fruit. And he wakes up, he feels he's like very stiff. He's elderly. He walks back to town, goes to his house, knocks on the door. A girl he doesn't recognize answers. It's his granddaughter. Yes? Who are you? I'm Choni Magel's granddaughter. Where's Choni? We don't know. He disappeared. We never knew what happened to him. And of course, he tells everyone he was lost and so on. But for 70 years, he slept. And the lesson here is that we never planned for ourselves. Yeah, I mean, of course we plan for ourselves. We also want to benefit from the apple tree, the blueberry tree. But the true planting is for all generations. If you're only planting for yourself, what happens when you're gone? Nothing remains. Tu B'Shvat is you plant for all generations. You plant values, you plant morals into your family. You give spiritual content, and then from generation to generation, the plants will flourish and grow and grow and grow. And you'll end up with a beautiful, beautiful orchard, an impact for all generations, for all times. So what is Tu B'Shvat? We recognize that we have to take care of the universe, the trees, the flowers. And we also recognize in everything there is the potential. Everything has that potential for growth. And you see the potential, you'll have the growth. If you don't see the potential, you'll never see the growth. You'll never expect. If you don't expect and tell your children, I know you could do it. You're such a good person, a bright person. Then you will get from your children that growth. Because they feel that you are counting on them. They feel you are. If everybody wants to mute until you have a question, whatever. So that is the message of Tu B'Shvat. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. You have a whole day to plant, eat fruits, and celebrate the beauty and the majesty of what Tu B'Shvat represents. Does anybody have any questions? Or go ahead, Devorah.
My question, it may sound silly. How was this particular date chosen? I mean, why isn't it the 12th or the 20th?
That's a very, very good question. That's a very good question. I'm not sure I actually know how the date was chosen. I would have to look it up. But I did mention that the source of the date is from the Talmud. The Talmud. So it comes obviously from the Torah. But I assume that there is, and I could look it up. Maybe right at the end of class, I'll look it up. How do we know that it's the 15th day? All the other holidays, I know how they're established.
Right.
God wrote, like Rosh Hashanah. Why is Aleph Tishrei Rosh Hashanah? Because that's the day Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve were created. So it's the culmination of creation and also the beginning, because mankind. So that's Rosh Hashanah. Other holidays I know, Purim, the celebration of the decree. But Tu B'Shvat, I would have to look it up. It's a very good question. Thank you. I'm going to look it up. So before we go to the Torah portion, which is magnificent this week, I want to share a story to end off Tu B'Shvat. I shared it before, but I'd like to share it again. I hope you don't mind. So in 1963, they were doing excavation in Masada. You know, Masada in Israel, they uncovered unbelievable things, you know, mikvah, and really the history of what happened in Masada. So they went and they found a food storehouse in Masada where food was stored, and they found seeds for a date palm tree. Now the seeds were, of course, very what we call fajaver, dried out, stale. So they put them in the archaeological, whatever, storehouses in Tel Aviv or Yerushalayim, where they store all everything they find. In 2005, a group of botanists in Israel, led by Professor Levy, she was a woman, said, let's do something with these seeds. Let's plant them. You never know. A dried out seed. You don't know.
I'm on a class.
So they planted
And
the
no.
seed, and 6 years later, lo and behold, a date palm tree grew. They couldn't believe it. It was a dried out seed. And they named it Shelach, Methuselah, from the Torah, who lived the longest than any man on earth, 900 and something years. Now, Shelach was a male. The tree was a male. So they have this tree, but you can't, how do you call it when you procreate it? You can't. It's only a male tree. Cross, right? So what happens? Now, these seeds were from the Second Holy Temple era. What happens? They're digging in the Judean desert. The story thickens, the plot thickens. Listen, in Jericho, and there they find another food storehouse. And what's in there? Can you guess? Date palm tree seeds. So now they have a second set from the First Holy Temple era. Again, they decide to plant these seeds. And they realize when it grows 6 years later, it's a female. And they call her Hannah, after the famous story of Hannah and Samuel. Remember the story we discussed? Hannah is barren. She goes to Shiloh, where the tabernacle is, and she prays for a child. And she's accused of being drunk, and she says, I'm not drunk, I'm drunk with sadness. And Eli, the prophet, gives her a blessing, and she gives birth to Samuel, the prophet. So they call it Hannah, because who would believe that these seeds would give birth to anything? So now you have a husband and a wife. You have Mrs. Shelach, and you have Hannah, and they put it together. And a few years later, they showed a video, I just watched it last night, of a rabbi getting the first dates from the tree, gorgeous, big, plump dates. And he makes on public, in the public news, they show him making Borei Priya, Eitz and Shachiyanu. And he said that the most sweetest, delicious dates you could ever imagine. And when it says the land of milk and honey, people think bee honey. But the Torah tells us it's the honey from the date. Now, why do I share the story? You look at people at times, you look at a Jew, or you look at a life and you say, what, it's lifeless. It's dried out. There's no hope. It's all over for me. It's all over for everybody. Look what's going on in Israel. It's all over for us. But you don't know. A seed could be dried out. Could be, wonder, will it ever give birth to anything? Will anything ever grow from this dryness, from this barrenness? And out comes a magnificent date palm tree that gives forth the sweetest fruits. Never look at a Jewish person and say they're hopeless. It's over. They're never going to amount to anything. Allah yitzlach, hashlamazal, hashlamil, hanudnik, whatever. Never look at any person and say they're worthless, they're hopeless. The Torah is teaching us you could sometimes have something that looks like it's over and done with. But if you nurture it, you feed it, you plant it, you give it a little companionship, look what it could bring forth. And it's also the story of the Jewish people. We were ashes in the Holocaust. The Jewish people were never going to survive the Holocaust. The Jewish people were never going to survive Egypt. The Crusaders, the pogroms.
The Inquisition.
Here we are now. The sea, even when it's beaten, tortured, and burnt, the Jewish people will always come forth and bring forth not only a plant, a sweet plant. This is who we are. The story of this date tree is our story, and it repeats itself over and over again. And also in the book of the prophets, remember the story of the dry bones. I don't have to go with it. Remember the story with Aaron. God said, oh, they're rebelling. Take a dry stick, and it brought forth almonds from his stick. When the Jews were saying, why should Aaron be the high priest? Why should everybody should be from Moses' family? What about us? So Aaron was told to bring a stick, and all the tribes were told to pick which dry stick blossomed? Aaron's. Brought forth almonds to show that when you have faith in God and your feet are planted, you will always blossom. Whereas sticks that are empty threats, empty people who hold up a stick, their sticks will remain dry. Will never bring forth anything. And that is the sticks of those who are trying to destroy the Jewish people. Their sticks will remain dry. They will be wiped out. We will not hear from them. You ever see any pharaohs running around? You know, where are they? Where's Julius Caesar? Where are the Romans, the Greeks? They were so powerful. Where are their children and their grandchildren? Nowhere to be found. But where's little Moishala, little Chanala, little Rivkala, little Margalit, little Yochevet? They're here, and they keep coming. And Baruch Hashem, generation after generation. So Tu B'Shvat, the story of the plants, is our story. Never think that a seed will not come back. The Jewish people will always be here. That's the promise of Almighty God. Then we will never be wiped out, no matter what. So that's what we have to keep thinking about now as we go through the terrible crisis. Crisis is not even the right word. Terrible Holocaust that's going on in the world now.
Mhm.
Does anybody want to add anything, say anything, complain? You sure you're Jewish women?
Right.
I always tell this joke, a bunch of women get together to play mahjong, and the hostess goes out to bring coffee and cookies, and the three other women are sitting around the table. One says, "They," and the other one says, "Oh, yeah." And the first and the third one goes, "Oh." The hostess comes in back with the coffee and the cookies. She says, "Ladies, stop complaining about the children already." I'm not matching.
And I have one. So the same waiter comes over, waitress, and she says, "Ladies, is anything all right?"
Very good. Very good. Very good. Beautiful story. So now we're going to segue into the Torah portion. And there's a beautiful custom. This Shabbos, when we read the Torah portion of Shelach, we read Oz Yoshir. When the Reed Sea split, everybody thinks it's the Red Sea. When the Reed Sea split for the Jewish people, the miraculous splitting of the sea, and the Jews came to the other side and witnessed as all the Egyptians drowned, they began to sing a song of praise to God. And it became part of our prayer called Oz Yoshir that we say every day, and Shabbos, and this Shabbos we will read it in the Torah. Now, it's a beautiful Torah portion. So it's a custom that this Shabbos, Friday, you make kashi, buckwheat. You make buckwheat, and before Shabbos you put it out. The custom is for the birds. You feed the birds. I said to my Baba, why do we do this? She says, because not only did the men, women, and children sing the song, the birds tweeted along, the wildlife, the birds were so happy that the Jews were saved that even they tweeted along. There's other reasons, but this is the one reason I remember. But it's a custom to make buckwheat. So every Friday before Parsha B'Shalach, I always send out a WhatsApp to all my children, don't forget to make kasha. I think I have a box from 1901. I use it every year. Because I don't make kasha on a daily basis, even though it's supposed to be
You
very.
will have kasha from the year one.
You also have a. It's
I
like
love it.
you could see
Yeah.
you could see the Ziploc bag it's in is a little grungy already. I have to change the Ziploc bag this year.
The other connection might be that the birds are the ones that take the seeds from the plants and drop them all over to make new plants. That's one of the ways that things are propagated.
That's the word, propagated. Now we have the right lingo. Yeah, beautiful. I never heard that, but that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's beautiful. So Shelach, in a nutshell, what happens? Paro says, go. It's the plague of the firstborn. He wants everyone out. They leave. 3 days later, he realized they ain't coming back. And he sends out, including himself, the chariots, go bring the people, my slaves, back to Egypt. And there's a very, very cryptic story here. The Jews are traveling. How do they know where to go? There's a cloud from God that kind of is like their ways, Google Maps. And instead of taking them a direct route through the land of the Philistines, right? If you're traveling with 6 million people, do you take a shortcut or do you go the long way? You take a shortcut. You go the straight way. For some odd reason, God almost takes them in a U-turn when they end up at the shores of the Red Sea. Why? Why didn't God take the direct route? So they come to I'm telling the story, then we'll go into the whole analysis. And now what happens? They see from the distance, the scouts see who's chasing after them. Paro and his soldiers, a whole legion of them with their chariots, like the old-fashioned, chasing after the Jews. So they turn around, they see the legion of the Egyptians coming from afar. They look before them, there's this massive ocean. So they go to Moshe and they say, what? Why'd you take us out of Egypt here? We're going to die, or we're going to be killed or taken back. So a miracle happens, and the sea splits into 2 walls, the Torah tells us. And just imagine now if the Mediterranean Sea or the Atlantic Ocean split, 2 walls, and you're able to cross across. They cross over, and as the last Jewish sandal hits the dry land on the other side, and the Egyptians begin to pursue, boom, the water closes, and all the Egyptians drown. Their possessions and their wealth is spilled out to the sides, and Paro is the only remaining soldier of his people from those who pursue. They get spit out by the ocean, and he heads back to Egypt. The Jewish people are saved. Now, after such an unbelievable miracle, Moshe gathers the Jews, and Az Yashir, they begin to sing and dance. Wow, look what God did for us. Look what God did for us. And then another beautiful, beautiful thing happens. The Torah says Miriam, the prophetess, the oldest sister of Moshe, through whom the whole miracle of the whole Exodus happened, all started with Miriam. It says, in the merit of the Jewish women, were we redeemed from Egypt, and this generation will also be redeemed from exile through the Jewish women. That's what the Torah tells us. So Miriam, the prophetess, gathers all the women. They take out their tambourines and they sing their song and dance with Miriam. And it is a song of 3 passages. Moshe's song has many, many passages, if you look. Miriam's song, 3 passages. So we have to ask 2 interesting questions here. Oz Yashir, it begins, then we will sing. Is the problem here with grammar? Shouldn't the Torah said, they sang, the past, or we're singing? Why say Oz Yashir? Then the Jewish people will sing. Why a future? Why is this opening verse of the Torah song of Moshe for the future? Then we will sing. Question 1. Question 2, why does Miriam have her own song? Why can't she sing along with the guys and the whole nation, the men, women, and children? And where did the women get tambourines? You're running away from a country. You're running away from the enemy. You pack your tambourine. You pack your silver. You pack your mama's diamond ring. You pack the pictures of the kinderlach. You pack warm clothing, but a tambourine? You have room in your suitcase for a tambourine? Plus, a tambourine. You know, if you have room, you pack more food, you pack more clothing, you maybe a Chanel bag, but a tambourine, who needs a tambourine? You're marching in the desert. So let's go back to Miriam, because, you know, I always love to speak about the power and the energy of the Jewish woman. You know, think about Miriam, her trauma that she went through. I mentioned that she started the whole redemption of the Jewish people. Remember what she went through? Remember, she comes to her father and mother and said, how could you stop having children? Remember that story? She says, you're worse than Paro. You're telling all the Jews to abstain from intimacy, not to have any more children, because who wants to bring children into a life of slavery? But Paro only decreed the boys get killed. Now you're also saying the girls shouldn't be born. And so she gets her father, Amram, who's the leader of the Jewish people, to reverse this decree that he made. Everybody stop having intimacy with your spouse. We're not having children right now. And then when Moses is born and they come after to find him, and he has to put his son, and they have to put their son into the river because they have to save him. You know what? You know how horrible she felt when her parents yelled, look what you did. You told us to have children. Now look what's going to happen to our child. He's going to be killed. He's not going to survive. You know the guilt a girl feels or a child feels when a parent says, you gave us wrong advice and we listened to you, and look at you now. So you have to understand, Miriam went through a very, very traumatic situation. She stood up for what's right, but it was not without a little pain and hurt from everybody around her. And she watches how her brother is saved, and so on and so forth. So now Miriam, finally, they left Egypt. Miriam has her song to sing, her thanks to give, her pain to let out. She needed to sing her song. It's a short song. It's a song of 3 verses, but it expresses her feelings of joy and happiness about, thank you, God, for saving us. So yes, everyone sang Moshe's song, but then there was a Miriam song for the women, because the women experienced the miracles. They said, we're not listening, we're having children. They opposed their husbands. Remember the story? They took their copper mirrors, they beautified themselves, and they went to where their husbands were working under the apple trees. They had intimacy with their husbands and they gave birth, even though it was a terrible time. And that's why those copper mirrors were used to create vessels in the temple, to remember the courage of the women. Those same women said, there's going to be a time we're going to want to dance and sing and celebrate. Let's pack some instruments. Let's not leave it to chance. And that's how they had tambourines. Tambourines symbolic of their faith in God. There will be a time to dance. There's destruction, there's beheadings, there's atrocities, there's a war, but pull those tambourines into your pocketbook because there's going to be a time we're going to pull them out and we will sing and we will dance. That's the tambourines symbolize their faith in God. God took us to this point. God will take us past this point. So the story of Miriam and the women is really the foundation of the whole Exodus. Without the women and the courage of the women, God forbid, I don't want to say we would still be. This is the beauty of the story of Miriam and her song. Now, what's with the Oz Yashir? We will sing. We will sing, Moshe says in the song. We will sing. Again, what Moshe is telling the Jewish people is 80%. Do you know that 80%? Let me get my paper. Hold on a second. Of the Jews died in Egypt. Do you know that? Only 20% of the Jewish nation left Mitzrayim. 80% died. Why? Some died because they were tortured by the Egyptians. Others died because they didn't have the faith. They said, nah, we're not going. No, thank you. That's not for us. And that's why during the plague of darkness, those bodies were hidden. Their lack of faith, they passed away. During the plague of darkness, the Medrash tells us. So 80% of the Jews left. So though the Jews left, there was also pain with leaving. People buried relatives in Egypt. It wasn't so simple. Okay, let's go. What about all the pain and hurt over all the years? So Moshe was telling the Jewish people, sometimes, even when there's seemingly a victory, a redemption, there's still pain. But Az Yashir, know that in the future you will sing. And there will be a future. When you say to your child, I'll see you next month, they go, oh, you're coming. You'll be there. Az Yashir is telling the Jewish people, there is a future for you. You're singing now, but you're also going to sing in the future. So Moshe was giving strength and fortitude to the people. There will always be a time that you will sing. Again, underlining that the Jewish people will remain forever. There will be a future. There's a beautiful story of Aaron Belzer. The Belzer Rebbe. Many Rebbes, Hasidic Rebbes, are named after their towns or their cities in Europe, Hungary, Poland, that they came for. So the Belzer Rebbe came from Belz. He was called Reb Ara Belzer. A very, very holy, very, very holy Jew. I want to just give you a little background about Adela Belzer because it's just so amazing, his story. One second. Sorry. Now, how do I come to the story of Adela Belzer? I left out a very important point because Rashi says that when Moshe says, Oz Yashir, we will sing in the future, Rashi quotes and says, why does it say it in the future tense? To allude to the fact that when Mashiach comes, there will be the resurrection of the dead. You know the concept that when Mashiach comes, all those who passed away will be resurrected. It's a Jewish concept. It's not a Christian concept. Sometimes people think it is. And they will be resurrected in the land of Israel. That's why a lot of people bury only in the land of Israel, because there's a whole Kabbalistic insight, not to get gory, but that the underground, the bodies will roll to the land of Israel, be painful, and then they'll be resurrected there. So people bury in Israel to avoid that Kabbalistic insight of the pain, but this is just one explanation. So Everyone asks, why does Rashi feel that this is the reason? Who says this is the reason? That's why Moshe, to talk about the redemption, that there'll be the resurrection? And the answer is yes. That Rashi is telling us, that Moshe is telling you, though there were those who passed away and only 80% of the 20% left, there will be the resurrection. There is always hope for the future to be reunited with your loved ones. So now going back to the story of Arla Belzer, how this all ties in. So he was very famous rabbi, and he was called the Wonder Rabbi. Even non-Jews knew how miraculous the miracles that Arla Belzer performed. And when the Lubavitcher Rebbe met him in Berlin, he said, he is energy without matter. That's how holy he is. Now, what happened to Arla Belzer? A terrible thing. His whole family and children were wiped out by the Gestapo, by the Nazis. They murdered his grandchildren, his wife, and his children. Ugh. And through help of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe and other wealthy Jews, he was able to escape from Poland into Hungary, into Turkey, Lebanon, and finally into land of Israel in 1944. He made it to Israel. I'm just giving a little history. He remarried, but he never had children again. He only had his children that were wiped out. So everybody said the Belz dynasty is over. He has no children. There'll be no Belz. Who's going to take over? But Belz became one of the largest Hasidic dynasty in Israel. How? His brother was killed. He raised his half-brother's 1-year-old son, Yisachar Dov, and he became the next Belzer Rebbe. They have close to 50,000 disciples in Israel, all over the world, along with yeshivas, institutions, schools, and synagogues. Now back to the Belzer Rebbe. You know that normally you say Kaddish and Yizkor for your family that got killed. He never said Yizkor for his wife and children. You know what he said? They are holy souls that transcended this world. They are alive. They're just out of this world. They're transcending. I cannot say Yizkor and Kaddish for such holy, holy souls. It would be a desecration of their memory, he said. So now, this is the story of Aaron Belzer, is the story of the sea. Oz Yoshir. A Holocaust happened. The Belzer's whole family was wiped out. Everybody said Belz will cease to exist. You wonder why it matters. It's not that it matters. It's more showing you how when we think there's no hope for the future, the seed is dried out, the people were killed, how could there be continuity? Moshe says, Oz Yoshir. The Belzer Rebbe took his brother's son, he raised him, and he built a dynasty from his nephew. And it was a rebirth in the land of Israel, of the Belzer dynasty. So whenever we think it's all over, remember Oz Yoshir. There will be a resurrection. And the Jewish people will always come back, even when you think it's all over. That's Oz Yoshir. That's the song. Why it's such a powerful song. Yes, it's a song of praise, a song of thanks. God, you saved us from the horrible Egyptians. You split the sea. It's amazing. But Oz Yoshir, it's not only a song for that moment, for that day, for that miracle. It's a song for all times. The Jewish people will always find a time to sing. And you know who the singing begins with? You and me and us. We all have to sing. It's our song to sing from generation to generation. Does anybody want to add anything before I share one more insight, if you like, if you want, from the splitting of the sea? Does anybody want to say anything, add anything, comment? Laura, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Actually, I didn't have anything to say.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Alyssa.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Does Tu B'Shvat and this Parsha always occur together? Because the two messages are very similar.
Yes, yes. It's always together. It's
Good question.
yes.
So
Yeah.
that
Great.
when you talk about why is it Az Yashir, it will be in the future, we're talking about the trees will be for future generations. And when you talk about the rebirth, we talk about the trees having the inner life that's just beginning now and will continue later. So the Tu B'Shvat and this Parsha the messages are very similar.
Yeah, exactly. They are very similar. They are very similar. There's a common theme of rebirth and yeah. And when things seem dormant, they're really not. They end up blossoming. Exactly. Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. I mentioned, why did God have to take them this indirect route to split the sea? Zayme Michael, don't take me to an ocean and don't split the sea, as you say, Why? If you could go straight, why go crooked? Why complicate things? Some people love to complicate things.
Well, because
Go ahead.
then it was easier for the Egyptians to overpower them.
Okay, but God could have saved them from the Egyptians, no matter what, right?
I guess
But
he could have
maybe Margaret, God wanted them to all drown, the whole cavalry, right? Yeah.
Maybe there was something to the zigzagging, the circuitous route to give them time to think, or this got to be some meaning, which
Yeah.
I know you're going to impart with right now.
There's a lot more to say, but I'll share another beautiful insight. So remember, we spoke last week, you could take the Jew out of slavery, but sometimes the slave mentality, you take the slavery out of the Jew. You can take the prisoner out of prison, but can you take the prison mentality? So what happens when they come to the ocean? They say, take us back to Egypt. What'd you bring us here? Right? The complaints begin. The complaints come in, even though they saw all the miracles, they were still, remember, we're not talking about every single man, woman, and child complaining, but there was always a group that had complaints. And then Moshe gives them a very lengthy answer, which I'm going to read. And you wonder, why didn't Moshe just say, go forward? God said, go forward, go forward. He gives them a whole spiel. And the Torah is very concise. Conversations are very concise. It could have been one line where Moshe says to the Jewish people, stop kvetching, go forward. But then the Torah tells us that based on Moshe's answers, we realize the Jewish people, the group who were complaining, were 4 camps, 4 different types of people. One group said, listen, let's just jump in the water and die. We have no choice. We have no choice. The second group said, no, let's go back. At least they were alive. We'll let ourselves be captured. Let's go back. The third group said, no, we're going to fight. We're not warriors, but we will fight with everything we have. And the fourth group said, let's pray. Prayer is always the answer to every Jew's problem. You have a problem, you pray. Does Moshe accept any of these ideas? Moshe says to them, fear you not, stand still. The ones who want to jump into the ocean and kill themselves, he says, stand still. Then he says, oh, sorry, lost my place. We've spoken to Egypt and to bring us forth is not word, and the session and Moshe Vayom. Moshe, fear you not, stand still and see the salvation of God today. And then the ones who said, let's go back to Egypt, what does he say to them? Whoever you have seen today from Egypt, you will never, ever have to see them again in the future. So no, you're not returning to Mitzrayim. You may see them today, but you'll never see them again. And to the next group that wants to say fight, Moshe says, the Lord will fight for you. You don't have to fight. And to the last group that wants to pray, Moshe says, and you shall hold your peace. In other words, Shah. What should you do? Go forward. They go forward, the sea splits, and they cross. So Moshe was answering the four groups. So again, why did the sea split? Why did there have to be the whole thing of the splitting of the sea? Because, first of all, many of them still had the mentality that maybe we should go back to Egypt, safer, better, and they still felt enslaved. And so God had to give them the final hurrah. What is an ocean? The Kabbalah explains, this is a little bit Kabbalistic, the Kabbalah explains an ocean is symbolic of the physical world. You see only the surface of the ocean. As we know, that submarine that imploded, the Horizon, the mystery of going millions of miles under the ocean and discovering the secrets of the ocean is an unbelievable desire by so many adventurers. We still have, just like we haven't discovered the planet life, we still have not even discovered the ocean bottom, right? We can't get down there, the pressure and all the different things. So the bottom of the ocean is considered the spiritual world. The regular ocean, the surface of the ocean is considered the physical world. The bottom of the ocean is considered the spiritual world. The reason that God had to split the sea is to show the Jewish people a lesson for all times, that what you see is not what you get. If you want to uncover your greatest potential, if you want to free yourself from the slavery, from the challenges, the things that are holding you back, you have to go and realize that beneath this sea, the dry land, what's under the sea is what really defines your existence, your soul, your faith in God, and discovering your divine connection will allow you to cross the sea, will allow you to split your own personal seas in your life, and will also allow you to cross this sea. God wanted them to rely only on faith, because it is faith that splits the sea, not the fighting, not the praying, not the giving in, not the jumping in and killing yourself, pure, unadulterated faith. When you have faith in God, not only will this sea split, your personal sea splits. When a person is faced with the ocean, there's nowhere to go. I'm being chased by my enemies. I'm being chased by my debt collectors, metaphorically speaking. I have no choices in my life. I could either kill myself, I could fight, I could pray, I could go to them, give in to those challenges and impulses, or I could have faith in God and realize that everything comes from God, and that's when the sea splits. And that's when you uncover that what matters, what counts is not the surface of the ocean, it's what lies beneath, the divine connection, godly soul. So God does this whole splitting of the sea to show the Jewish people what lies beneath the surface is your connection to your soul, your divine connection. That's what gets you through life. That's how the sea got split, and that's how your personal seas throughout your life, because we all have times we need our seas to split. We need to get beneath the physical appearance that everything is terrible, everything is horrible. How can I get through this? Believe in God, faith in God. There are times you pray. We know that. There are times you fight. We're fighting right now. And that's why Moshe also says to them, look at Egypt because you'll never see them again. Why does he say that? when you confront your Egypt, when you confront your oppressors, whether it's a mental oppression, physical oppression, emotional oppression, you'll never see it again. But if you hide and you don't confront your pain, your suffering, your trauma, your issues in your life, you'll keep seeing that problem come back and back and back again. Moshe says, look at those Egyptians. Look at those people who enslaved you. You will never, ever see them again. Confront them today, because it's over if you do that. But if you hide and give in and you don't confront issues, you don't confront the enemy, whether it's a real enemy or, again, emotional, psychological enemy, they'll always be chasing you. So with the splitting of the sea came a tremendous transformation in the mindset of the Jewish, of every man, woman, and child there. That God didn't just bring them to the sea to show them a big miracle. Whoopie-doo. Let me show you how great I am. God was showing them, when you're coming to a sea, coming to an ocean, it's very daunting. You don't know what's underneath. I'm splitting it for you today to show you what's underneath is who you are. Your physical being, the ocean, the surface. The splitting, the dry, the treasures underneath. Once the ocean is split, is your divine soul, your divine connection, your ability to confront any issue in life and get through it and come to dry land. And this was the final, what we call Exodus 2, the clincher to allowing them to get the Torah. Had they not confronted the sea, they wouldn't be ready to get the Torah. It would be again and again and again. There were still those that did not do the work necessary, as we see later, but majority walked through the sea. So by Moshe saying go, it was like saying, this is it, have the faith, go. If they fought and won, they would say, well, we won the war, so we were able to go. If we prayed, they could say, we prayed so hard, look what happened. God didn't want them to rely on any of the finite solutions. He wanted an infinite solution, which is faith in God. Once they had the infinite solution, they were able to...
Just some peanut butter and toast.
They were able to cross the sea. Logically, go back, surrender. So the story is that sometimes there's an obstacle in our journey. This is the sum up. But guess what? Okay. The obstacles are the journey. We always say, it was an obstacle on my journey. It was a kink in the trip. No, that was the trip. We fail to realize that the obstacle is the journey.
Oh.
You have to overcome the obstacle. That was the destiny meant for you. So if you begin looking at your obstacles as your journey, you take on a whole new dimension. This is meant to be this way, and my faith in God will get me through it. So the bottom line is, it's a faith in God, belief in God, believe there's more than what you see, than meets the eye, no pun intended, S-C-A, that allows you to overcome your obstacles, or rather travel through your obstacles and cross your sea. Because we all have a sea, we need a split, sooner or later, and many times many seas. So this is the story of the splitting of the sea. This is the true story of the splitting of the sea. Does anybody want to say anything, add or anything before we conclude?
What?
Does anybody want to add anything, say anything before we conclude?
Well, thanks for tying it all together. It's a,
Truth is, it's not so difficult, because when you read the commentaries and the explanations and the understanding of everything that's going on in the Torah portion, it kind of is like almost a roadmap I'm looking if there's anything very more. There's a few more beautiful things, but we'll save it for another time because as we, our time is up, and we don't want to. I don't want to take more than. But I want to end off with a story from an Auschwitz survivor. He tells a story that every morning he woke up, and when the sun shone on him and the fellow Nebuch prisoners, he hated the sun. He would call out, "Chutzpah! How could the sun, how could you rise when we are suffering so? How could you do this to us?" And he would be angry, he said. "How could you be indifferent to the suffering of millions of Jews sent here? How could your sun glow on the blood on the earth?" And then he left Auschwitz. He was freed. And then he says one morning, he saw the sun rise as a free man, and he felt peace. He said he realized the Oz Yashir, that the sun was always going to rise every single morning. You know why? Because the sun was there, as the sun will rise. And one day you'll appreciate the sun. You'll realize the sun will always rise. And there will be an end to the night. That's the story, he says. So he said, now when he looks at the sun, he realizes it was always the eternal message of the Oz Yashir.
That's what it
In
just
the
said.
future, the sun will rise. The sun will always rise for us. And the thing is, we need to end off, we need to sing our song.
What?
Because everybody has a song to sing. I just read, again, in conclusion, one more little thing. I just read a beautiful, beautiful letter. I want to share it with you because it's so poignant and beautiful. Give me 1 second to bring it up. My mother sent it to me. So a soldier who's from the reserves goes to fight in Gaza, and he just got killed, Nebuch, Baruch Dayan Emes.
Yeah.
This is what he writes. I want to read this to you. So when you light your Shabbos candles 18 minutes before sunset tomorrow, think about the soldiers of Israel. He was 35 years old, Elkanah Wiesel, father of 4. He was one of the 21 Israeli soldiers killed in that Gaza story, with the blown up building. And he left his family a letter as follows. If you are reading these words, something must have happened to me. First of all, in the event that I have been taken captive, I demand that no deal for the release of a single terrorist be made for our release. Our resounding victory is more important than anything else. So please simply continue putting all your efforts into ensuring that our victory is as resounding as possible. Then he writes, perhaps I have been killed in battle. And when a soldier is killed in battle, it's sad. But I ask you to be happy. Don't be sad when you bid farewell to me. Sing a lot. His words, enter people's hearts, hold one another's hands, and strengthen one another. We have so much to be proud of and be happy about. We are a regeneration of redemption. We are writing the most significant moments in the history of our nation and of the entire world. So I ask you to please be optimistic. Keep choosing life, a life of hope, of love, purity, and optimism. Look those who are dear to you in the whites of their eyes and remind them that everything they experience in this life is worth it and they have a great deal to live for. Live. Don't stop the power of life for even a single moment. I was already wounded in Operation Protective Edge, he writes his family. I had the option of staying behind, but not for a moment do I regret my decision to go back into combat. On the contrary, it's the best decision I ever made.
Is it possible?
This is the story of Am Yisrael.